What's up, everybody, and welcome back once again to another episode of Upset Alert. It is episode number 73 of the Ultimate College Football Podcast, celebrating all 130 teams in FBS. Now, this fall, not all of those teams are going to be participating in FBS football, but many of them are, and some more than we maybe previously thought, as the Big Ten has officially announced, as we discussed on our last episode, that they are going to be starting football up next month. We've got some chatter of the Pac-12 potentially joining the fray at some point as well, whether that's late October or whether that's November sometime. Really unclear at this point what exactly the Pac-12 is going to do moving forward, but there's definitely beginning to be some rumblings like we saw in the Big Ten before they went ahead and made that move to make it official. Now, if you want to hear us talk about that Big Ten schedule, that new schedule, this kind of the 8 weeks, no bye week, then straight into the conference championship game and that Champions Week idea they have with every team in the division playing a game in championship weekend. We discussed a lot of that on last week's episode, or excuse me, earlier this week episode, Monday. So we posted that one, episode 72, for those of you who are looking through the feed, trying to find our discussion of that Big Ten schedule in a little bit more detail. Today, however, is going to be more about the SEC as they are joining the fray this coming weekend. We're going to get our first look at highly ranked teams like Alabama, Georgia, Florida, LSU, Auburn, and so on. Of course, the SEC year in and year out is producing top-tier football teams. Particularly, we get out of the West division we think of as kind of the power division of the SEC, but also out of the East, of course, and a little bit of a remark on that just off the top of the show here. They had the SEC, I guess, virtual or digital media days this just past week here, and Florida actually, for the first time in a while, to my knowledge at least, picked to win the SEC East by the SEC media over the Georgia Bulldogs, the 3-time back-to-back-to-back reigning SEC East champions, including, of course, that magical playoff run in 2017 for the Dogs. So this is pretty interesting stuff, right? Pretty spicy takes that we've got coming out of SEC media days, with the Florida Gators picked to go to Atlanta for the first time since that 2016 season. Of course, we all know how those trips to Atlanta went for them in 2015 and 16, but nonetheless, they did win the East in back-to-back years under Jim McElwain, believe it or not. So, with all of that being said, we are going to kind of jump into some of this SEC football talk today a little bit here, and like I said, really just week 4 in general, as our usual is on a Thursday afternoon when we are recording. We are going to be previewing the entire weekend's slate of football games here. So without further ado, let's jump over into this week 4 schedule. Pardon the little video hiccup there for those of you watching live on Twitch. If you do want to join us live on video, remember it is twitch.tv/robotbraineater. I'll say that again later on, so you get it. But again, that's twitch.tv/robotbraineater if you want to watch the episodes live on video. We upload them later to YouTube and, of course, to podcast services all over the world: Apple Podcasts, Spotify, Google, Amazon Music, freshly added, etc. So we're going to kick off this week's kind of preview looking at tonight's game, probably tomorrow by the time most of you hear this episode. This is Thursday, September the 24th, as I record about 1 p.m. here on Thursday afternoon. The first game of the weekend, UAB at South Alabama. Now, this one's kind of interesting because South Alabama, I would say, has slightly overperformed to this point. UAB maybe slightly underperformed to this point. But that's about the end of my intrigue on this game. South Alabama, despite overperforming slightly to this point in the year, they're not a great football team. UAB, while they might not have looked perfect, they are a significantly better football team than the South Alabama Jaguars. I like UAB to win this game and win it fairly comfortably. That's 7:30 on ESPN Thursday night. Friday, so tomorrow night, September the 25th, Middle Tennessee at UTSA. That's going to be at 8 p.m. on CBS Sports Network. So the Blue Raiders have looked as bad as anyone in the country through these first few weeks. They have gotten blown out by a lot of good to average teams, I would say. UTSA has had some ups and downs early on in the season here. It is hard to pick Middle Tennessee right now. They just have not done anything at all to this point in the season to inspire any confidence in them. So I am going to go ahead and roll with the Roadrunners of UTSA in this Friday night matchup. But that is not an interesting game there really too much. These are two bad teams. If you want to see something sloppy, maybe some crazy plays happen in terms of, fumbles, turnovers, things like that, that might be a good game for that reason. But it is going to be sloppy, in my opinion. I think that's going to be kind of an ugly game. I like the Roadrunners to come out on top. Middle Tennessee needs that win, though, because they are just not looking good so far. They are right down there with the worst teams in FBS in terms of how they've looked to this point through 3 weeks. Saturday, September the 26th. So, of course, you can see, for those of you watching here on video, this is a big Saturday slate. I'll start by addressing the elephant in the room here. There have been some more games postponed, even since I kind of went through last week and made my watch list for this weekend, kind of games that I would be personally keeping my eye on the television this coming weekend. Notre Dame, number 7 Notre Dame at Wake Forest. This might be the most notable matchup to get postponed for this week. The Fighting Irish are just, there's some COVID-19 positive tests, really the reason why you're going to see any of these games get postponed. But that's disappointing. Notre Dame obviously has a lot to play for this year. This is a conference game as well for them, so it will be interesting to see how they handle this. In this game, obviously, I was picking Notre Dame over Wake Forest, but regardless, you hate to see this happen, right? You hate to see this happen for a number of reasons, but first and foremost, of course, for the health of those players, everyone around that athletic program. Tulsa at Arkansas State, you see, get postponed as well. Another disappointing one there. Arkansas State, a pretty exciting team out of the Sun Belt so far. South Florida at Florida Atlantic. Florida Atlantic, I believe, has had back-to-back games get postponed. They had one against Georgia Southern last weekend get postponed. And then we've got North Texas at Houston on there as well. So 4 games to this point that have been postponed, of course, barring some last-minute postponements or cancellations. We have occasionally seen that come in as late as the day before or 2 days before, so we'll cross our fingers that that is it for this week as far as the postponements go. But there are a lot of big games on the schedule this weekend regardless, and we're kicking it right off here with a big one. Kansas State at number 3, Oklahoma. Now, number 3 is pretty high for Oklahoma if you ask me, but regardless, Kansas State at Oklahoma, 12 p.m. on Fox. That tends to be one of the bigger games of the week in the Big 12, that 12 noon Fox game, if not the biggest game of the week. So Kansas State, of course, everyone's going to talk about the fact that they got upset by Arkansas State, but this is a pretty good Kansas State football team. This was a team that, with the original 12-game schedule, I actually picked to upset Oklahoma. We all know that year in and year out, someone normally does it. Someone normally upsets that top team in the Big 12, like Oklahoma. tends to lose to somebody that they probably shouldn't, whether that's Texas, whether it's a Kansas State, whether it's Iowa State, whoever it might be. This year, I picked that to come a little bit later in the year because of the way the schedule changed. So I do have Oklahoma winning this game. But don't be surprised if Kansas State keeps it a little closer than you might think they would at first glance. We've got number 5, Florida at Ole Miss. This is a decent game, I think, out of the SEC. There's a pretty sizable, I think a 2-score at least, spread in this one. But Ole Miss gets this game at home. This is 12 noon on ESPN. First game of a very weird season following a very weird off-season. The Gators are a very good team, and I'm definitely picking them to win this game. Don't sleep on Ole Miss's offense, though. They could put some points on the board. I'm not 100% sold on Florida as a top 5 team. I think you have to put them there until they show you otherwise, just because this is what we think is going to be a very good football team this year. They've got, a pretty reliable quarterback in there, which a lot of SEC teams, that's more than a lot of SEC teams can say this season. But this will be an interesting first look at Florida to see if Kyle Trask at quarterback continues some good, consistent play there, and to kind of see also what this defense looks like, because they're losing some talent on the defensive line particularly. So we'll get our first look at the Florida Gators. Should be interesting. Like I said, I've got Florida winning it. Maybe a little sloppy at times in this one, but I do like Florida to win that game. Number 23, Kentucky at number 8, Auburn. Ranked matchups, top 25 matchups have been few and far between to this point in the season. Kentucky at Auburn, I think, is a pretty good one. This has a potential. I honestly was surprised this wasn't the choice for the 3:30 CBS SEC game, just because this, to me, is the game of the week in the SEC. But, yeah, I really like this football game. I think Kentucky has the potential to go into Jordan-Hare and make a lot of noise in this game. I don't know if they come out with the win. I'm still going to roll with Auburn for the win here. But Kentucky could make a lot of noise in this football game. 12 noon on SEC Network. Normally not a big game to keep your eye on. A lot of the time that noon SEC Network game will be a big SEC program versus a cupcake out of conference opponent or something like that. Maybe you get like a Georgia Vanderbilt in this time slot as far as conference games go, something like that. But this is a good game for noon on the SEC Network. There's actually a few good games early on in the day already there that you can see. But like I said, I like Auburn in that football game ultimately to win it. We've got number 13 UCF at East Carolina at noon on ABC. This one I'm not going to spend a ton of time on. UCF looked very good against Georgia Tech. That was their first game of the year. I like UCF to continue to roll. East Carolina is okay at best. Give me UCF pretty big in that noon ABC game. Georgia Southern, after that last week's game getting postponed, is going to be at number 19 Louisiana at noon on ESPN2. So Georgia Southern's only game we've seen them play thus far was a near disaster against FCS Campbell. Georgia Southern has to have cleaned up a lot if they want to have any shot in this game against the Raging Cajuns. Now, put an asterisk on that ugly first game for them because they were missing over 30 players, including 8 starters, due to, I believe, mostly due to COVID-19 and contact tracing. Not really a ton of positive tests, I don't believe, so all those players should be back for them in theory this game. Georgia Southern at Louisiana, though, could be an early kind of litmus test of where the top tier of the Sun Belt compares to some of the just below the top tier type teams. I picked Georgia Southern to be about 4th or 5th in the Sun Belt this year. Louisiana is definitely the team to beat thus far, it looks like, in that Sun Belt Conference, but they kind of had an ugly game that went to overtime against Georgia State last weekend. I think of Georgia Southern as a better team than Georgia State, so this should be interesting right here. In that Georgia Southern could, in theory, push this Raging Cajuns football team, but Louisiana has every right. This is their game to lose, right? They absolutely should win this one. That is the noon on ESPN2 right there. Number 24, Louisville at number 21, Pitt on the ACC network. Continuing the trend here, another top 25 game in the noon slot and on the ACC network, no less. Louisville just lost a hard-fought game to Miami last weekend. That was a pretty good football game if you guys didn't get a chance to catch it. Pitt has looked great so far as well. I think this is an interesting, again, early season litmus test in the ACC. We saw Louisville and Miami play, and I said that the winner of that game would kind of come out as maybe the favorite in the ACC behind Clemson and Notre Dame. If Pitt wins this game over Louisville, they put themselves right in that conversation with Miami as well. So maybe some early season teams beginning to emerge as those kind of teams behind Clemson and Notre Dame as far as favorites in the ACC. We've got Georgia Tech and Syracuse, and I guess maybe I didn't voice my opinion very clearly on the last couple, but I'm picking number 19 Louisiana over Georgia Southern. I'm picking number 21 Pitt over Louisville. And then we've got Georgia Tech at Syracuse at noon on ESPN3, so streaming only. Georgia Tech has been a tale of two teams early on, right? They picked up a big win over Florida State on the road. They got blown out at home by UCF. They go on the road to Syracuse here. I'm going to be honest, I think Georgia Tech is bad. I was surprised, honestly, that they beat Florida State. What they looked like in that UCF game was about what I expected. A team that would not give away games, but a team that just doesn't have the talent to compete for 4 quarters with most football teams. I like the Syracuse Orange here to beat Georgia Tech in this football game. I think it's going to be close. Georgia Tech could prove me wrong here, certainly, but I am picking Syracuse in this one. Georgia State at Charlotte. Simply put, I like Charlotte better in this game. This is noon on ESPNU. I don't think either of these teams are particularly great, but I'm going to give it to the 49ers in this one over Georgia State. Noon on ESPN Plus, for those of you who subscribe to ESPN Plus. App State hosting FCS Campbell. Campbell, of course, like I just said a moment ago, gave Georgia Southern a hard time a couple of weeks ago. I like App State to roll in this game. I think this is a chance for them to right some wrongs that they have made to this point in the season. They struggled, obviously, losing to Marshall, a pretty good Marshall team, by the way. I like App State to rebound with a win over Campbell here. We've got Florida International at Liberty on ESPN3 at 1 p.m. Neither of these teams I'm particularly high on, but you have to give credit where credit's due. Liberty picking up the win over Western Kentucky this past weekend. I am giving the edge to the Fighting Hugh Freezes of Liberty. The Flames, I think, pick up a close win over Florida International in that one. 1:30 p.m. on Fox Sports 1, we are looking at Iowa State at TCU. Iowa State, of course, had that disappointing loss to the Louisiana Raging Cajuns. TCU has looked okay, I guess, to this point. I think the expectations are reasonable for TCU. Nobody's picking them to win the Big 12 or anything like that. I like the Cyclones on the road in this game. I'm pretty high on Iowa State, despite the loss to Louisiana. I think that's just a testament to how good Louisiana was on that day. Did Iowa State look bad in that game? Absolutely. But that is not an indictment on how their whole season is going to go. I like Iowa State to rebound and pick up some big wins later on in this season, so I'm taking the Cyclones at TCU in that 1:30 p.m. game. Tulane, a team that gave up the huge comeback to the United States Naval Academy last week, was up 24-0 and lost to Navy 27-24 in the final, is playing at Southern Miss, a team that has really not looked great so far. They lost a heartbreaker against Louisiana Tech last week. Early in the season, they were upset in a major way by South Alabama. So these are two teams that need a win. And in this case, I know I picked it last week and was wrong, but I think Southern Miss rights the ship. I do think they pick up the win over Tulane in this one. I saw more effort, I think, out of Southern Miss late in the game, despite it ultimately losing it to Louisiana Tech, than I did in Tulane late in the game. After they got up 24-0, it was just like they folded once Navy started getting the ball rolling a little bit. So give me Southern Miss in probably an ugly game, I'm thinking at this point, based on the way those two teams played last week. Give me number 6 LSU over Mississippi State. This is the 3:30 SEC on CBS game, so kind of the SEC game of the week. According to CBS, the defending national champions are not getting any modicum of respect this season as a legitimate SEC championship contender. Most folks are saying that they see them going 6-4 or something in that neighborhood. I don't think LSU has gotten that much worse. I understand they just lost an all-time great quarterback, a first-round running back, lots of talent, right? Not to mention Joe Brady, of course, going on to the NFL from his passing game coordinator position at LSU. But this LSU team is going to put the hurt on Mississippi State on Saturday at 3:30, and I think that's their chance to flex their muscle a little bit and say, hey, we are still here. We're still LSU. We still got Coach O. We still got a lot of talent all around the football field. So I really do think this team kind of flexes their muscle a little bit in that game and comes out with a big win over Mississippi State. Texas Tech is going to be hosting number 8 Texas, 3:30 on Fox. Texas Tech, I guess the best you can say about them is they had a very, very ugly win over an FCS opponent earlier in this season already. That was against Houston Baptist. I just don't have much faith in this Texas Tech team, not to mention they're up against a top 10 team in the Texas Longhorns. Hook 'em. Texas is winning this one big, big, big on 3:30 p.m. on Fox. We've got another ranked matchup, actually. Number 22, Army at number 14, Cincinnati at 3:30 p.m. on ESPN. I like this football game, actually, because Army has looked good enough to be a legitimate top 25 team, whereas Cincinnati, the Bearcats, has really, what am I trying to say here? I guess they have heavy, heavy expectations compared to what Army did coming into this season, I think. Cincinnati's a team that is one of the favorites, if not the favorite, in the American Athletic Conference. I like the Bearcats in this game, but I think Army, because of the way they play, especially the way they run that option offense, they could keep this one close until the very end. But I like Cincinnati to win the football game. Number 15, Oklahoma State, hosting West Virginia, 3:30 p.m. on ABC. I like OK State. This is a great football team, one that, while I'm not going to go as crazy as some people are going and say that they're going to be a playoff team or the Big 12 champions, anything like that, I am going to give the edge in this game to OK State. I just saw some folks right before I went on the air saying on social media that they think West Virginia can be dangerous in this game. I believe it was over on CBS Sports, if I'm not mistaken. I am not convinced of that, quite frankly. West Virginia needs to show me more before I start buying into that football team. Maybe after this game, they can convince me if they come out with a win. But for now, I'm rolling, despite the ugly win against Tulsa. I'm rolling with OK State, Chuba Hubbard. one of the best running backs in the country. I like this OK State offense despite them not showing too much last week. I think they are going to pick up the pace against West Virginia this week. This next one here may be the battle for the worst team in college football right here. It is certainly close to that level of bad. There are 90 teams, including the Big Ten teams that just rejoined us essentially, or will rejoin us next month, however you want to look at it. There are 90 teams in our weekly ranking of college football teams. Number 90 is Louisiana Monroe. Number 87 is UTEP. Those two teams will collide as UTEP is at Louisiana Monroe, 3:30 p.m. on ESPN2. I have zero faith in either of these teams doing anything to come out with a win. I am going to say UTEP has slightly overperformed for me to this point in the season, perhaps, just by virtue of, and that's not to say that they've done anything great, but it's by virtue of they have more wins than I expected them to, just because of their schedule changes and adding some FCS opponents to the schedule. So I'm going to give this one to UL Monroe, who doesn't have a win yet. I'm going to give them a slight edge and go with my preseason prediction that I do think UTEP is one of the worst, if not the worst team in FBS this fall. Number 4, Georgia at Arkansas. This will be our first look at a new look, potentially, Georgia Bulldogs offense with offensive coordinator Todd Monken at the helm. Of course, a brand new quarterback who has still not been named. This could get interesting in that way. We know what we're getting out of the Georgia defense for the most part. This is a defense that returns a ton of talent from last year. They were the top defense in a lot of folks' eyes, if not top 3 at least in the country. So this defense is going to be more of the same, I think, for Georgia. Could be a different looking offense. Of course, no more DeAndre Swift there at running back. They'll look to Zamir White. They'll look to James Cook to fill in those gaps. And then they're looking at a new quarterback. Like I said, you've got George Pickens, and what else beyond that at receiver? So there's a lot of question marks for this Georgia offense coming into 2020 after an underperforming offense we think of in 2019 for the Dogs. They shouldn't be seriously challenged in their first week of the season here at Arkansas. Arkansas just simply doesn't have it. But it will be interesting to get kind of an early feeler of what this Georgia team looks like on offense, because guess what? After this one, it's not going to get easier. They've got Auburn, Tennessee, Alabama, all kinds of folks coming up after this one. But I like the Dogs, of course, in this game by a comfortable margin, regardless of how that offense may look. I think they'll look pretty decent against Arkansas. Not perfect, probably, but you're going to see George Pickens go out there and make plays. I think you're going to see Zamir White with some big runs, maybe James Cook making some good plays on some screen passes or out of the backfield as well. Duke at Virginia. Simply put, I like Virginia in this game. 4 p.m. ACC Network. The Cavaliers are not what they were last year. Duke is not great. This is probably not going to be a particularly pretty game, but I do like Virginia to win it, probably by 1 or 2 scores in this one. I don't think this is going to be a big runaway type game. Texas State at Boston College. Boston College actually looked pretty good last week, 26-6 over the Duke Blue Devils. This one's at 6 p.m. on ESPN3, kind of a weird time slot, and the streaming only there. I like BC. Give me Boston College over Texas State. I liked what I saw out of Boston College in that game. Texas State is not particularly great. Let's roll with the Eagles. Number 2, Alabama. Roll Tide, roll at Missouri. 7 p.m. on ESPN. I am rolling with the Tide. Big shocker there. There's not a lot to say other than this will be our first look at Alabama to see how they look. Again, kind of same story as Georgia. There's a lot of turnover here for Alabama. They'll have Najee Harris back at running back. They'll have a lot of their defensive stars back. But they've got some changes, including most notably at quarterback. Will we see all Mac Jones? Will we see a little bit of the talented freshman there? Who knows? Is it going to be a Jalen Hurts, Tua Tagovailoa 2017 situation all over again? We'll have to wait and find out. But I like Alabama to win this one by a whole lot. Missouri is not particularly great. I think the Crimson Tide gets a pretty comfortable win there. Houston Baptist at Louisiana Tech. Louisiana Tech looked great last week. They're going to roll here against Houston Baptist at 7 p.m., streaming only on ESPN3. Stephen F. Austin at SMU on ESPN+. Again, FCS opponent. SMU is going to win very comfortably in this one over Stephen F. Austin. Another SEC matchup, Vanderbilt at Texas A&M. That's 7:30 p.m. on the SEC Alternate Network. I like Texas A&M pretty comfortably in this. Vandy, on paper, looks like the worst team in the East yet again. And I like the Aggies to at least win this one fairly comfortably, if not live up to that top 10 ranking, which I really don't think Texas A&M will be. Florida State at Miami, number 12 Miami, 7:30 p.m. on ABC. I have no idea why this game is the one they chose in this time slot. I think this is a very uninteresting game in the ACC because Florida State did not show me anything against Georgia Tech. Miami has looked great early on. They looked particularly good against Louisville. They look like a more complete team in that game. And I think Miami is going to boat race Florida State in this game. I just can't imagine it being that close. If it is, then Florida State just showed us a complete farce against Georgia Tech. Because if that team is even kind of the team that they actually are, the one that we saw against Georgia Tech, then Miami is going to win this one by about 4 or 5 scores. Number 16, Tennessee at South Carolina, 7:30 SEC Network. This is the sleeper SEC game of the week right here. I told you I like that Kentucky and Auburn game. I like this one a lot too. South Carolina is not an easy win, despite the 4-8 record last year. I think this could get really interesting. Tennessee getting a lot of preseason hype because of the way they finished the season last year. This is their chance to come out of the gate and show us why. Number 16, Tennessee. Listen to that. When was the last time you heard those words? Number 16, Tennessee. Going on the road to South Carolina and play the Gamecocks, who have a new starting quarterback. By the way, I've been talking about them all offseason, talking about Ryan Helinski. He's not even the starter. So it's going to get interesting. It's going to get weird in Columbia, potentially. I like this. This is an exciting early season game to see where these teams fall in the SEC East hierarchy. I'm really interested to see this football game. It's one of my games to watch of the night for sure. Kansas at Baylor. Kansas has lost to Coastal Carolina already this season. Baylor went to the Sugar Bowl last year. I like Baylor by a large margin in this football game. 7:30 p.m. on ESPNU. Does not have to be on your watch list unless you just want to see something that's not safe for work. Baylor is going to win this one by a lot. NC State at number 20, Virginia Tech, 8 p.m. ACC Network. I like this one a lot because it is the first look at Virginia Tech. The Hokies are another one of those teams out of the ACC, along with Miami that we see, along with potentially Pitt if they can pick up a win this weekend. This is another one of those teams out of the ACC that could emerge right behind Clemson and Notre Dame as one of the favorites in the conference. I like this Hokies team. I think they win against NC State to start off what could be a pretty exciting season for them. And then we've got Troy at number 18, BYU. Troy looked really good last week, okay? They picked up a big win over Middle Tennessee State. Of course, Middle Tennessee has looked horrible to this point in the season, but Troy did blow them out. They will not do that to BYU. Brigham Young has looked incredible in that matchup against Navy in the first week of the season, 55-3. BYU is going to roll in this one. This is our sub for Pac-12 After Dark. This is the closest we get. It's the 10:15 ESPN game. The Cougs are going to win big over Troy. And that's going to wrap us up for our Week 4 preview for episode 73 of Upset Alert. If you want to follow us on Twitter, I would greatly encourage you to do so. At Upset Alert Pod on Twitter, that is where we post college football news every single day. That is where we discuss everything that's going on in the world of college football, just in general there. And we also, of course, post when we are going to go live on twitch.tv/robotbraineater every Monday, every Thursday. If you want to watch us here live, again, that's twitch.tv/robotbraineater. You are more than welcome to come hang out with us. Watch this show live in video form. Come hang out in the chat. Drop your comments about college football. I'll read those comments out on the show as you post them. If you want to listen to us on podcast services, we are on all of them. We're on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, Google. Like I said just last week, added to Amazon Music's podcast as well. So your format of choice, please do subscribe to us. Please do follow us, like us, whatever the format calls that. You know the deal there. And if you have the time, take the time to leave us that 5-star review. Helps us greatly to get more eyeballs and more ears on the podcast. Thank you guys once again so much for listening. It has been an incredible time doing this podcast for you thus far, and we hope to keep it going for a long time to come. So thank you so much for listening to this Week 4 preview as we head into some excitement of SEC football, Big Ten football 1 month from today as we record. Big Ten kicking off October the 24th, and hopefully Pac-12 football joining the fray at some point this year as well. So again, thank you guys so much for listening. Hope you have a wonderful rest of your day. And until Monday, we will see you later.